everyone, and welcome to our 2023 Innovation Festival session. And it's called Supporting Our Neurodiverse Archaeologists to Thrive, Creative Workplace Adjustments. This conversation leads on from the 2022 Conference in Conversation session, which looked at neurodiversity, past, present and future, the recording of which is on our website. This session is co-organised with my CIFA colleagues Alex Llewellyn, and it builds on a body of work completed by CIFA over the last few years, all with the aim of increasing awareness and understanding of neurodiversity in archaeology. We're really keen with this session to repeat the format of the previous session I referenced, and all with the aim of having a space which allows relatively free-flowing conversation about neurodiversity in archaeology. And we're so over the moon to brought together a fantastic bunch of archaeologists to have that discussion today. We're going to look at three main themes today, which include support in place for our early career colleagues, the ongoing support a neurodiverse archaeologists might need throughout their career, and sustainable support platforms. We're hopefully really going to crowdsource some ideas with that final session as well. But first, let's introduce ourselves, and then we can go in there, jumped straight into the discussion. So I'm going to go to Adam first. Do you want to introduce yourself, Adam?
My name is Adam. Adam Jarvis. I work with Air Photo Services, doing a little bit of self-promo there. I work in GIS and remote sensing interpretation, air photo interpretation, and I am dyslexic. I have dyscalculia, easier to say it that way, and I have autism spectrum disorder as well, and I'm pretty sure that I have some kind of sensory processing disorder as well. You name it, I'm pretty sure I could find something. So yeah, that's me. A bit of an open book, just looking forward to this chat.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Adam. I'm going to go to Megan then.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Megan. I am currently acting as the chair of the CIFA Early Career Special Interest Group. I've been working in commercial archaeology for the past 2.5 years, and I've just started as a graduate teaching fellow at the University of Lincoln. So I was diagnosed as autistic when I was about 10 years old, but then it wasn't until I was 18 and I was sort of struggling with my exams at school that I realised that I'm actually also dyslexic and dyspraxic and have a very slow processing speed. And that was something that wasn't picked up on until I was that age, and my teachers kind of went, well, the way you are in class is so different to the way you are on paper in an exam. And that really helped me at the end of my schooling and then throughout university as well. Yeah, I think that's me.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that, Megan. Sarah.
Yeah, so I'm Sarah Howard. I'm senior archaeologist at the Environment Agency, and I cover the Midlands. I guess my neurodiversity, or what I used to understand as basically not quite feeling right, because I actually got late diagnosed, but it's been like a big question mark over most of my life. And that I basically requested help, or at least to know for sure, a couple of times. At school, I didn't really understand what was going on. I just knew I was inconsistent in terms of my performance. But by the time I moved through undergraduate and master's and then PhD, I really knew that I am not quite right. But it was kind of met with, oh, well, you seem to be fine, you're performing well, you don't need the label. And so I kind of parked it really, because I was starting to feel like a hypochondriac. And then I've had, over the last couple of years, gone through a couple of things, including chronic illness, and then a pandemic just kind of topped it off. And this kind of feeling of not quite feeling right is coming back. And I think what finally did it for me was it's the way I've been described. Like, various words have been used to describe me, and some of them were quite derogatory. And I think the last one was manic, and I was like, oh, that has particular connotations. And it was because I was particularly excited or really enthusiastic for something. And of course, as archaeologists, we do kind of get quite excited about what we do. maybe a bit more than a normal, don't know if I can say that, you kind of regular jobs, normal jobs, regular jobs. But basically I then thought, right, you know, this, I need to know for sure. So I went through occupational health, and I finally got diagnosed as dyslexic, and I've always been dyslexic my whole life. I've got a slightly different presentation to a lot of people, but it is there. Possible that I have ADHD, but I haven't been able to get a proper diagnosis of that. And essentially because I have a medical condition as well, my GP would prefer that we basically concentrate on my physical health. And so my kind of neurological health and conditions are kind of taking a bit of a back seat. So that's where I'm at. But so I've been quite looking to get workplace needs assessment and starting to get adjustments through work.
Brilliant, Sarah. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I think that actually there's some definite overlaps with my own journey there, actually, I think. So I'm Cara Jones. I'm the Sector Skills Manager at the Chartered Institute for Archaeologists. I've been diagnosed with dyslexia, and it was kind of picked up at university. But I've actually really only started to understand it fully in the last 10 years or so. And again, you know, I'd clearly been doing okay up until that point. So I just didn't really feel that there was any strength or gain from embracing it, maybe. But as I say, I've been reevaluating that stance in the last 10 years or so. And in particular, the potential role any of us can play to help any other archaeologists that are maybe going through this process themselves. And I've greatly benefited from being part of the sort of CIFA neurodiversity work. So just sort of hearing other people's stories and chatting through neurodiversity, it's really helped me look more at the strengths of it rather than perhaps the challenges of it. And I think, again, hopefully that's going to come up through our talk, is that it is a strength. Just because it's a little bit different, I might be a little bit different, that can still add a lot to the workplace. So excited to explore that. And I'm going to hand over to Alex.
Okay, hi, I'm Alex Llewellyn. I'm the Head of Governance and Finance at CIFA. I haven't been diagnosed with any form of neurodiversity, but my daughter has been, and my husband and my dad and my brother, so I'm very familiar with sort of the issues, I hate those words, isn't it? The challenges that dyslexic people face. So I work very closely with the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee that CIFA's recently established, and I've been working alongside Cara on how we can look at neurodiversity in archaeology. I mean, it's great to kind of share everything in archaeology, and it's helping me to be able to kind of then support my daughter through her journey through school, to be aware of the different options there are available to her, and also, yeah, to help learn and help share that information. So yeah, that's why I'm here today.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, let's get started and jump straight into our sort of first topic. I think we were really keen to explore that support for early careers and entry routes into archaeology, and look at the support perhaps some of our early career colleagues might need, or any experiences that we have. But I suppose I just wanted to open up with the first point in terms of to reflect on the switch between an educational environment to a workplace environment. And I wondered if anyone had any specific thoughts about that. Megan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the thing that I found was, with the sort of educational environment, the support that I got was very structured, or in theory it was very structured, because I did have a couple of issues where I showed up to an exam and they were like, we don't have a laptop for you, and I was like, okay. So there was, in theory there were these like very structured things of like, we know what to do for like someone with this condition, we go down this path, or someone who experienced this, we go down this path. And then when I came into employment, I found that it was very different. I did find that like it came up a lot on the sort of occupational health questionnaires when you start your job, and you'd get a phone call going, "You've put this down. What support do you need?" So it was very much like, instead of having that sort of pre-structured idea of what you did need, you would say what you thought you needed, which on the one hand is really good, because in some cases I've been offered support that wasn't like tailored to me as a person, and while it might have really helped someone else, it actually sort of hindered me and it wasn't what I needed. So it meant that I was able to sort of tailor my own adjustments and my own support. But then on the other hand, you kind of on the phone to someone and you're like, what do I need? What does help? And sometimes you forget, or sometimes circumstances change and something will come up. And when you were absolutely fine and needed no adjustments, and suddenly something changes and you're like, oh no, I really need this. How do I get those adjustments put in place? Because there's not like someone that you go to. It's quite a different experience in that way. Yeah, I'd say there's the sort of pros and cons to both approaches that I've experienced. But yeah.
That's brilliant, thank you. Adam, have you got any thoughts about that?
So I was kind of lucky in that I started working in archaeology while I was studying at college, working part-time for a local unit. And so I kind of I was diagnosed while at college. So a couple of things that's like I was doing illustrations and people would give me context numbers. Oh, go and do this section drawing next, digitize this, whatever. And I'd go and do it. And I'd then have to immediately come back and say, what number? Because I'd forgotten the number, because I can't do numbers. And things like that. So I think it's sort of, for me, it was a bit like, once I got diagnosed, I was able to kind of go, oh, this is why I can't remember which section you want me to do, what reference you want me to put there, what the site number and site name are, things like that. So I was able to kind of be like, I immediately be like, okay, so can you give me these things in like very short, blunt, textual things? Don't just tell me. Can you back it up with an email so I can read it and actually remember? I need it right there on my screen. But I mean, in my first job in archaeology, I didn't have a lot of, it was a really small unit, so there wasn't a lot to sort of like outsource and reach for different kinds of support. It was very much we'll just kind of like tweak what we do to kind of accommodate you, but there wasn't a lot that could be done. I mean, to be fair, this was like 10 years ago. And a lot has changed in terms of recognition and support in those 10 years across the board. And I dare say that as much as we're all tired of hearing the word coronavirus pandemic, I do think that's a big thing that's caused a shift. A lot more people have suddenly gone, oh, I need this, I need that. So but I must admit, like, the support that I had in going from college, much like Megan was saying, it's very much like, you fit in this box, this is the support that we offer you in this box, there you go, done. Whereas when you enter the workplace, it's, even with people who know a lot about it or have had the training, it's still very much like, what do you need? It comes back onto us. And if we don't have that confidence to kind of be like, this is what I need now, sort of thing. I mean, obviously now is maybe being a bit pushy, but in some cases it is, you can't really get going without it almost immediately. But I think it ends up switching when you come from education into work. It kind of switches it falls onto us to request and to push for this instead. So it's quite gives you a bit of whiplash, I think.
yeah, and I think if you're not fully aware of, like, reflecting back, I look back, and actually what probably might have helped a little bit was asking for more flexibility on task sequencing. So I think, and again, as you say, like, a lot's changed since then, but I think, when I first started, everything was quite rigidly set out in a framework to what this is what you do then, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. What I love about my job now, and I love working at CIFA, is that if there is a day where my head can't quite get into a task, I can move to another task or another aspect of that task and come back to it when my head is in a little bit of a better place to deal with the original task. And just having that flexibility actually increases my productivity. It really allows me to still do my job in my allotted hours and get stuff done most of the time. But it's a real joy to be in a position to have that self-authority in a way to make those decisions on your work streams like that. I don't know, Alex, what it's like working with someone that can be a bit jumping all about the place with the tasks.
I don't know, I love it. I love the kind of energy that comes from that jumping around all over the place as well. But I think your point, Adam, about the COVID-19, and you don't want to kind of dwell on that point because it is a couple of years ago now. It's made people realise what maybe they need, and I think it's allowed kind of employers to change a little bit, to actually think, okay, so that does work. I think we get very rigid, don't we? And you can't possibly let people work from home, because why would that work? And then we had to really change dramatically and be very flexible about what we do. And I think that's what we've got to retain as well, is like, actually you can try something different and it might not work, but it might work. And I think if we can kind of keep that mentality going forward about different options. But I also think the other important bit is, some of the things that we've put in really works. Like Cara said, flexible working is a great thing to do, but I do worry sometimes a little bit about people that have lost that contact. So I think, again, the kind of communication needs to be there, doesn't it, about what's working and what's not working, and what we can try differently. But
ironically, I think that not rigid structure, but it's like that rigid structure that was instilled in me early on in my career has actually shaped me into, like, I'd be interested to know, if I hadn't had that framework instilled on me at the start of my career, if I'd been, sat by myself in a home office working by myself, would I have developed the work techniques and work ethics that I do apply to my work? So it's a really interesting, I look back and I was like, I probably caused extra stress at the time, but then it's helped me actually progress in my, does that make sense? Like, it's really interesting. But Sarah, have you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's interesting because I imposed my own structure on my undergrad. So basically I messed up my A-levels for various reasons, and I went to uni 3 clearance. And then when I got to uni, I was like, right, we're gonna sort ourselves out, we're gonna like get on it. None of this, like, don't know where my homework went. Honestly, I still don't know where my homework went. There's a black hole somewhere with all my homework. I don't actually remember not wanting to do it. It never came with me. It was probably left at home, various reasons. I mean, Adam, when you talk about memory, and I have a shocking working memory, so that's my real problem. But when I went to my undergrad, and I think I was too hard on myself. So I included adjustments. So I actually looked at what dyslexic students were getting, and I cherry picked from it. So it's exactly what Megan and Adam were saying, in the sense that you were told this is what you need, off you go. And you might have said, well, actually half this is completely useless. And it's actually more complicated to get to grips with, and it's going to slow me down. Whereas some, cherry picked. So one of the things I did have was I had a dictaphone. Towards the end of my university, that was quite interesting, because people were starting to get a bit funnier about being taped. But right at the beginning, that was perfectly fine. And I think we probably moved back to, as long as you ask, and most things are now recorded anyway. So I think having the notes pre-recorded, having like the session recorded, because I was taking notes, but I go back to my notes and think, oh, well, that's interesting. I start writing on lines with all the best intentions, and then it starts to get arrows, and then I mean, it's a work of art, but I don't know whether I would actually have passed any exams using my own notes. I then would go back to the recordings and then extract the stuff that needed. But when I went into employment, I obviously did a workplace learning bursary, and that was fine, but it was almost it was work shadowing, and it was you were told how to do things. And I think this is what I really struggle with, and I think why maybe I have a little bit of imposter syndrome, because as I've progressed through and I've got more responsibility and more senior roles, the support, it's a different type of support. Basically, it will be, you know, having like a buddy, or the formal structure that honestly I think I need, because I think my problem is sometimes I feel like it's the fundamentals that come from the structure. And if you know, you're just kind of getting on with it, it sounds like people will be like, we need to get rid of this one. But it's just, sometimes I feel like I just want to just go right back to fundamentals, get it all straight in my head, and then just kind of carry on. And it's maybe giving yourself time to do that. But I will say that I do benefit from having, particularly in my current workplaces, we've got a big group of other senior archaeologists, and we do place-based learning. We all get together, we meet up regularly, and so we can always discuss our sites and some of the issues that we're coming up against. So I really do benefit from that level of support. Whereas if it was just me attached to my region with no other archaeologists, I think I really benefit from talking through things with other people, and that's how I learn. And sometimes I think I might be quite hard to actually steer. Don't know, it'd be nice to go back, send some of my previous employers like questionnaire. How did you feel it was, you know, in terms of like steering me? Because I think sometimes I might come across as though I'm saying, yeah, that's fine, and I'm not taking it on. But it's also that I need to kind of take it away and think about it as well. So it's not being dismissive. It's just sometimes I don't really know how to interact with that kind of peer-to-peer, or like, you know, if it's a more senior person helping me, like how to interact with that. And I don't, you know, in the past, honestly, I just so that I can prove I was like listening, doing all the what are they talking about? Oh my word, I've been thinking about what my face is doing, like, and yeah, see, that's what I mean. It's not good. So sometimes I do say, like, I might look like I'm just stony face, like I'm probably trying my damnedest to listen, but it's sometimes like the cues that you have to give people so that they are confident in taking things on board will obviously, they will distract me to the point where I might not have listened. People can be talking in front of me and I haven't heard a word they said, and that was the thing that made me realise something not quite right is going on here.
I was genuinely told in primary school by a teacher, if you're, and I take things very literally, or I used to take things very literally. I've maybe learned steer away from that, but I remember being told in primary school, you can't be listening to me if you're not looking at me. And I was like, but I'm focusing on what you're saying, and I'm letting it come into my brain, and I'm processing it in my own way. And I did not understand why I had to be looking at someone to be taking in the information that they were saying, because I was like, if I'm looking at you, I'm thinking about looking at you. So it's very relatable. Yeah, definitely a thing that I think people don't always get. Yeah, sorry.
No, sorry. And I think there's two things there. One, I was I learned so much more by going to conferences than say reading journal articles, because I'm just like, I think I'm probably more of a visual learner. So if you're standing in front of someone, you know, someone standing in front of you and talking through a new idea, I will retain that far more than reading a dense journal article on that. And I think the other thing is, I'm a classic person. If I'm talking through, like, I take so many notes, and you'll go back and you'll look, and sometimes they're not the most legible notes, but that's how I retain things in my head, because it's almost like I've given my head less things to wonder about because I'm listening as well as writing, so then I'm retaining, and it's a really, I've only just noticed that in the last few years, that is something I have notebooks full of throughout my career. I'm sure at some point they will not be a museum piece because I will never be interesting enough for that. But it's like but I'm starting to get boxfuls of these notebooks now, and I'm going to have to at some point chuck them out because some of them are just like, no one's going to be interested in this card. So but it's interesting, these sort of different ways we learn and different ways we retain in that way.
How do you feel about that though? Sometimes I feel like I'll be drowning in notes. I think that's another thing. Like I would overdo it, or highlighting an article where I might as well just got the highlighter and just gone
do the whole page.
done.
I mean, I work a lot in different colour pens and I use highlighters. And actually, it's interesting, you were talking about like university notes. Again, over the summer, we're trying to do it for clear out, but over the summer, I found sort of high school notes, which were very one colour, very generic, and then my university notes, they're like bullet points, they're like different colour pens, they're gel pens, they're like highlighters, and everything. And it's like these bursts of colour. And again, it's clearly like, even if I've got a whole stationery cupboard on the desk next to me when I'm doing like notes and stuff, it's clearly helping me write more legible notes and retain that information. And like Sarah, I was really struck by what you said about almost like about at university, sort of maybe just switching up a little bit of how you're writing things or using different adaptations. And I think for me, definitely when I got to university, because I suddenly had the freedom to do what I wanted, I started writing and learning in a way that fitted more myself. But I didn't notice that at the time. I didn't notice that's what I was doing. But I think I look back and that was linked very much to my neurodiversity.
Mm-hmm. Do you mind if I go?
Megan, and then we'll go to Adam.
So I was just going to say, I've noticed a bit of a trend in what people have been saying. So there's that sort of idea of like, oh, you don't need a label, you're just sticking a label on it, and what's going to change. And I noticed, Cara, you said that you'd been doing okay up to a point. And I think that was something that I found as well with my, like, it wasn't exactly a late diagnosis, but it was a later diagnosis. Of you don't give yourself the accommodations, and I'm really glad, Sarah, that you did sort of cherry pick those things that were helpful to dyslexic students, even if you weren't diagnosed as dyslexic. So I think a lot of people don't give themselves the accommodations or don't allow themselves to think, is there a way that I could do this that would be easier on me or kinder to myself, until they get to the like, oh, something that is quite badly gone wrong here stage. Because that was with me. I ended up doing really badly in my A levels, and that was the point at which people went, something's happening here. And I just think one of the sort of best pieces of advice that I've heard is, if there is something that makes things easier for you, you don't need to have permission to do those things. So if like organizing your notes in amazing colors helps you, you don't need to like be like, can I have gel pens at work? Like, if that was just an example, that's what you were talking about, but if that makes sense. Yeah,
it really does. And it definitely resonating.
See for me for your gel pen habit.
Yeah. Don't know what it is.
I've had to go digital. I was losing too many pens. Got through the stationery cupboard in a week.
Adam, you had a point to say.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that last year I'd found one of my old science books in school, from school, and I noticed that a comment from one of the teachers, they wanted us to make these like amazingly drawn splash pages for each new topic, and I literally put in the middle of the page the title in black pen, and I noticed a comment, use more color, be more creative, and I'm like, and I remember even thinking back then, but that's not going to help me remember it. Like, I know that that's not how my brain works, but obviously things have changed now, and I don't know that teachers would necessarily put those kind of comments now, because obviously we're more aware of how different people's brains works. But actually, I just want to say, I noticed it's really interesting that we all seem to have done badly in our A levels. And I was thinking about this because I've been doing up a presentation for a conference and looking back at my school time. And I've noticed that throughout school, I was doing fine because I had plenty of time to slowly absorb and get comfortable with it. But as soon as you jump to GCSEs, that time goes like this, A levels like this, and then universities like this. And so I think that it was that sudden condensing of the same level, the same amount of information in a shorter time. My brain just couldn't handle it. And obviously, I mean, I will put my hands up and say I didn't go to university because I realized as I was getting through college, I basically had a mental breakdown because I couldn't cope. I was getting results back from mock tests, basically ungraded. And it was because I was sat there going, but you didn't ask me the questions that I knew the answers to. You asked me questions that, like, you didn't ask me what I knew. And I started going, if you'd asked me something that I'd actually, you know, one of my exam papers was entirely maths. I have dyscalculia. You expect me to do maths? Really? I failed that paper and I was completely fine with it because I opened the paper, did the whole look through and went, well, I'm going to fail this. So let's just do what I can do. And just, I had to sit there through extra time, of course. And I was sat there going, well, I failed. I'll just sit here for an extra 25 minutes waiting.
Well, actually, that's interesting because I'd like to ask you all about the extra time because obviously I've got a PhD. I think I've done as much education as I can, although I might be going for a professional qualification. And I did wonder about this. I thought, what will the extra time do for me? Would it actually be just kind of, I would get it done in the normal amount of time, but then have even more time to think about, like, I'm not sure if extra time would help me, but that's where it comes down to what our adjustments are and whether you need them. And I'm not sure. Might give it a go when I go for an exam for another professional accreditation. Clearly not got enough letters. Need more. Collect the letters. But yeah, I'm curious about that. And like you were both saying, you've got different you wouldn't necessarily need a whole suite that they're going to throw at you and the kitchen sink and everything, and then maybe actually get a bit annoyed at you when you don't use it. And that's what I'm aware of. I was given a standing desk when I was diagnosed with a physical condition, which meant I couldn't stand for long periods of time. And somebody said, why are you not using your standing desk? It's like, because it's kind of painful. And it's the same with, I think adjustments, they really are that. They've got to help you. And it's just, yeah, I do wonder about the extra time. Is it just going to be a little bit, 25 minutes of extra paranoia about what I have or haven't remembered?
Yeah, it's not something I ever requested. I didn't, but then I did okay. As soon as I did okay. I did better than okay at university for some reason. I think it's just, I love archaeology, and I just found a different way to learn. And clearly it was just when it came to exam time, was able to retain that learning and repeat it. I mean, my exam papers must have been littered with typos, my dyslexic typos, but I never opted for the extra time. And I think what you're saying there, you know, Sarah, there's the standard package of support isn't needed. Because another one was like, oh, you'll get a free laptop. I was like, well, I've already got a computer, luckily, so I don't.
That I picked.
Yeah. Very nice. No, it's like, you know, you get all this stuff and you get extra time. It's like, oh, thanks.
Yeah, by my time, they were not giving you the laptop. They were like, I'll let you print things out. But yeah, so for me, I really needed the extra time because I remember it was like a GCSE history exam, and it was one of my favorite subjects, and I finished the first question because my handwriting speed was so low. And yeah, so I finished the first question, and then they were like, time's up, and it was literally like time had just moved so quickly, and I'd not been able to get my thoughts out. I'd not been able to make my hand move as fast as my brain was going, and that was really upsetting and really difficult, and I didn't know why. And it was only a few years later when they were like, yeah, this is a thing that we can offer you. And I think that was even with extra time, because I ended up getting a laptop as well. Like, not, I was given one, but I was given like a school laptop and a university laptop to write with. And all of a sudden I was doing really well, because I wasn't having to use my hands to write. I was obviously typing, but so it wasn't that processing issue happening. And then I also got, I ended up getting rest breaks at university level. And that, I think, really took the pressure off, because if I was like, I just need to like stop thinking for a moment and take like 10 minutes to like have a breather, I could do that. And that was so helpful. And I also wasn't in a room with like 100 other people and thinking about, oh my God, that person's breathing really loudly. Am I breathing really loudly? Those sort of like anxiety thoughts. So I found it really helpful, but I know it doesn't help everyone.
Oh, you just given me PTSD from January exams. Everybody sniffling. And I have distinct memory. And so, I mean, just picking up on the fact that, again, it just goes to show that, like, rest breaks. I think we've all kind of started realizing we actually need to stop for a moment and take a breather from what we're doing. So that's definitely things that need to continue on. Like, I try and take a couple of, I mean, we should be taking screen breaks anyway, but we all know that we're just like, I'll just get this done. I'll just get it done. And we forget to take those breaks. I have to set timers on my watch to be like, take a break now. You got 15 minutes, and in 15 minutes, it's going to ring again so that you can get back to work. I don't always succeed, but yeah, like I have signs outside of this office. I've had to simplify it down to a measure that I'm not happy with, but I've basically got a huge sign, and I have it on the side somewhere here, that is a giant red circle with somebody going, and it basically says, please mind your volume outside of this corridor. And I've had to simplify it down to autistic staff member can get overwhelmed. And I've had to simplify it down to that because nobody reads it anyway. But it's done something to maybe stop a couple of people actually seeing it and going, oh. And they're trying, because I have people walking past, this is a multi-occupancy office building, people with other jobs and other things walking past, and they're talking so loud and it's so off-putting and distracting. I've had to invest in AirPods for noise cancelling to block them out. It does work. A few people get through, but yeah, like noise cancelling and things like that, other little things that we'll probably come on to in the ongoing support. But like, yeah, things like noise and all that in exam rooms, and it carries on even into offices. I've noticed that I've been in some places where it's so noisy, and I've just been sat there going, how can anybody think in this room? But again, allowing people the ability to have headphones or listen to music. I mean, I think we've spoken about this in some of the tea breaks. And it's a sort of like 50-50 pro con kind of thing. But things like that, I'm hoping that we've got now to a point that it's a bit more accepted to do those kind of things. I mean, I work in an office by myself. Like I'm not like, don't quite know what everybody else is doing in bigger offices anymore, but it's things like that can, from my past experience, really help. That we should be immediately going, if you need this, do it, in my opinion.
Do you think it's a challenge? Oh, sorry, Alex, go on.
I was gonna say, I definitely pro headphones on concentration. I know some days I get where I'm like constantly up and down making a cup of tea, I'm a bit hungry, I'm a bit this, oh, I need the toilet, oh, now the dog needs to go out, and then I have to go, right, okay, put my headphones in and just concentrate, you know, get everything there, get your headphones in, and then once the music's on, it's that time passing, isn't it? You know, suddenly you're sort of 5 or 6 songs in and you've been sat there for nearly an hour, and that's great. So yeah, headphones are definite. I'm very pro headphones, and I don't think it means that people have plugged themselves in and they're ignoring the rest of the world at all.
No, I'm very pro. I mean, I pay for a music platform. There are many out there, but it means that you can just have unlimited, you know, albums that, you know, those, you know, those you can stream as much and as different music as you like. And I just sink into, you know, or radio shows, 2-hour radio shows. I'm just sink into that while I'm working, and it really does help. And just sort of, I think before we move on, if you're an early career archaeologist, do you think it's challenging asking for these sort of considerations or adaptations? Like, how do you approach that conversation if you're just starting out in the workplace?
I'm hoping you can hear me. Can you hear me? Because my headphones are done. Funny. Cool, nice. My microphone was being weird the other week. Yeah, I do think it can be a real challenge, sort of advocating for yourself in those settings, especially if you don't know what's normal and you don't know what's like reasonable. Like, the term reasonable adjustments is such a challenging one, because you're sat there going, but what's reasonable? Am I being unreasonable? And I think one of the best things that I had was I just started a new job, and the project officer on site sat me and the other girl that started with me down and went, so I sometimes struggle with this. This is what I do to help. Is there anything that you struggle with? Is there anything that I can do to help? And by opening up like herself and talking to us on that sort of like equals level, that was so sort of helpful in encouraging both of us to say, oh, actually, like, this would be really helpful. Or I think a lot of the time I just go, just so you know, I am autistic, so if there's any moments where you're going, what is she doing, it's probably because of that. Because generally I don't need that many adjustments, but I do have moments where I think it's very helpful for people to know. But yeah, having someone sort of model what is a reasonable adjustment and what you can ask for is so helpful. And I think a lot of the time people don't do that, because there is that sort of assumption that you know what you need, you know what's helpful to you, so you'll just ask for it. And so many people, I think, especially when they're like fresh out of school or fresh out of university, or like just coming into a career, they don't know that they can ask for those things, and that it would make like their lives so much easier, and it would make their work less of a task and more of something that's an enjoyable part of their life. And I think, yeah, having those examples is so important.
Yeah. Sorry,
Like,
Sarah, crack on.
I have a buddy at work, although the weirdest thing is, I suppose, I have somebody at work who's a non-archaeologist, but they're kind of early careers, having moved into environmental management, and they've been really helpful because they were diagnosed as like an early teen, but they're older now. They're probably only a little bit younger than me, so probably in 30s. And so it's, yeah, I think we've helped each other. I think the one time was when she kind of outed me in the office. And I was like, and I thought, well, actually, no, because I suppose, yeah, this is me. I shouldn't be trying to hide it, especially if I've gone to the trouble of trying to find out more about it. But it's kind of, we had quite open discussions, and the pair of us massively overshare with each of our, you know, experiences in life. But actually, I have a fear of oversharing, but I do think sometimes that kind of, it helps other people. And her oversharing absolutely helped me. I think I've helped her to understand what she can reasonably ask for at work by saying, this is what I've asked for. And it's just, yeah, I had like my little, what I would call my little ADHD group, and they were great. It really helped. And there were people that, you know, I hadn't necessarily come across people like them before in many of the workplaces, but it was just, yeah, it just felt really supportive. And it's not to say that other people haven't been supportive, have been supportive in different ways in terms of my career development, but I think in terms of like the mental health aspects that go along with neurodiversity, and I think that's what my little group, that's what I got out of it, and it was really, really like positive and supportive.
It's amazing. Yeah, I think that peer-to-peer support or that kind of soft mentoring is just can be a game changer, can't it? And Adam.
No, I was just gonna say, because again, my processing and working memory is, so it takes, you'll probably notice this, somebody will say something and 5-10 minutes I'll go, no, you just something reminded me as well. Something I was recently thinking about was when I first started in aerial archaeology, one of my other colleagues was dyslexic, and one of the things that really got us through some of the most stressful work that we've ever done was the fact that neither of us could spell. And it actually made it really amusing because we all used to check each other's work and things like that, and we'd quite often be like, what's a boundary? Oh, a boundary, right? Okay, so we ended up writing it on the board, you know, this is how it's spelled in big letters so that we could go,
like writing it phonetically. Yeah.
And like it got to a point where we ended up making memes of half of the typos we made because they just became so like we don't know what half of them meant, but like at one point we started getting into Tolkien territory because instead of putting earthwork ditch, we ended up with Erithork ditch. I mean, it sounds like it could immediately come out of somewhere like, you know, Tolkien or Martin or something like that. And like, we kind of go, right, okay, well, not quite right, but we know what you mean. And we would sort of jump back and forth and be like, by the way, you spell it this way. And we're like, oh, what did I put? And we'd say it and we just kind of go, okay, sorry, yeah,
How is the red line for you? Because I can solve most of my issues with spelling with the little squiggly red line mostly.
So in Word, great. In GIS, spell check doesn't really exist because it's it's more like data entry rather than and it's something that I've long thought we need to get some kind of spell check in, but I'll talk about something about that later on in the ongoing support session. But like, yeah, I mean, in a GIS setting where you just have to type it and hope that it's spelled correctly, I can't see half of them. Even if I look at it 2 or 3 times, I can't spell ridge and furrow, and it's one of the things that I see the most of on aerial photos. I can't spell it to save my life.
You should move up to Scotland because we just call it rig and furrow. It's easier.
Yeah, but the problem is that it would end up being called riff and gurrow, knowing me, because the F and G are too close to each other. Don't even ask me to do a buffer for people because I'll just let you figure out which 2 letters are nearby the F. So yeah, I can never quite, yes. Yeah, so yeah, I can't do buffering because I will never spell it correctly. I actually put it into an email and I've set my emails to do a check your spelling before you send kind of thing. I've had to do that because I nearly asked somebody for a 500-meter buffer, but it wasn't spelled buffer. So
never good when the word is spelled correctly though, isn't it? Even though it's not the right word.
It recognizes it as a word, so it doesn't pull it up. So yes, while people are watching this, if you have a look at your keyboard, you'll see what I'm talking about. Yeah, so I actually well done, Kara, you've just spotted it.
We should talk about processing speed.
Yeah.
It's the same.
I think it's really good that you've had that kind of joke about spelling, because I always find the worst thing is when you send something and somebody will come back to you and go, yeah, can you correct your typos? And it's that kind of blank face, like your gut sinks kind of moment, because I don't know what my typos are. As far as I know, I've read it through and it's absolutely fine. So I'd rather somebody came back and told me where my typos were and did the kind of red pen across it than leave me to try and figure it out, because I know I'm going to send it back to them with the same typos in because I can't see them.
Yeah, and
Like,
overchecking.
No.
So for me, the paranoia makes me overcheck things,
Yeah,
Me too.
and you still think I haven't spotted it. I haven't spotted it.
and I won't. You might not do. You might spot it on like your fifth read, but it's like, I need to just bang this email out and send it. You know, you can't. So we're kind of getting on to stuff for later, but
Yes.
Yeah, I've got a good point about that. I'll just share one not funny thing, because it's just you know, when spell checkers don't pick up on words that are spelt right but they're in the incorrect word, and there's a number of times that I've, instead of Chartered Institute for Archaeologists, I've put charted, like, you know, you charter a ship or something like that, and I'm just like, oh, how can you get that wrong? That's your employer. You know? And it's so annoying because you just don't spot it. You just don't. Why don't we take a little break here, and then we'll come back and share all the amazing sort of workplace adaptations that we think support us to do our job. Brilliant. Well, I thought we could maybe move on to looking at the ongoing support that can support or help archaeologists thrive in their career. And I suppose we've already talked a little bit about managing conversations with employees and employers and colleagues, but how is that when you're sort of, I suppose, asking for what flexible workplace adjustments? How can you manage those sort of conversations? Has anyone got any good experience of managing those conversations with your employer? Adam?
Yes and no. I mean, so at the moment, you know how a lot of companies are doing the 4-day week but full pay kind of experiment. Well, I'm kind of doing that, in that I'm working the same amount of hours as 4 days a week, but I'm sort of just reduced my hours 5 days a week. I like the routine of coming in every single day. I think if I suddenly had an extra day at the weekend, I'd be very confused. But and also Fridays, it's such usual deadlines for things that, like, it would be weird to take a Friday or a Monday off. So, you know, but we'd had to reduce work during COVID because we didn't have the workflow coming in. Archives were closed. We couldn't look at aerial photos. And as we were heading back into last winter, I just sort of said, I'm more than happy to do extra time when it's really nice, bright, sunny days. But that reduced hours over the winter, not having to come in the dark, go home in the dark, that did such good for my mental health and for my work-life balance. I felt like I could actually get extra things done, knowing, right, I've got to get everything done by 3 instead of 4, you know, like just that extra. And so my boss was like, we'll give it a go for 3 months. We'll see how it goes and see how you feel. If it's working and you're getting all your work done, then we will go to it full time. And I think I'm lucky to be in a situation where I'm able to just sort of be, oh, we had to try it because of the pandemic. Could we try it again? Because it really worked for me. And I think that is another part of it. Again, I don't want to keep talking about the pandemic, but we know that the flexible things worked. They had to work in that respect. And I think that, just much like we were saying about, you know, how difficult it can be just to ask for what you need for adjustments and things like that. I think even when you're ongoing, you're not a new member of staff, it can be difficult to kind of go, actually, I know that you've kind of been all the way around to accommodate me, but could I just have one more thing? Because you always feel like you're being a little bit too needy or a bit too cheeky to keep asking. But I think if it really, I think it was Megan that said, if it's really working for you, you know, why not? I think if you I'm paraphrasing massively. But you supposed to remember that was like 20 minutes ago. So yeah, I mean, I think we shouldn't be afraid to ask for these things, because if we think, I mean, especially if you just say, can we give it a trial? I mean, maybe that's how, I know that
it's a good way to approach it with, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know earlier I was a bit like, we need these changes now, but I think maybe if we, for certain things, if we approached it more like, okay, if we need to be a bit more flexible, could we give it a go, see how it works, maybe approach it, you know, as a trial and error method, see what works for us. Because obviously sometimes we think, oh, that'll be great. And then 2 weeks into it, we're going, oh my gosh, I can't fit everything into this time that I suddenly don't have. I'm sure like I've done that at times. I've just kind of gone, oh, well, I'll just work later today. But I think that's how we should approach it, as a very much like, it could work. It could. We won't know unless we try.
Absolutely. And
yeah,
the daylight working pattern you just mentioned, like they do that in Norway. Like that is just a standard. They adjust their working hours according to the daylight that's going on. So it's not actually that random. It's, you know, but has anyone else got any experience with this? How do you approach conversations like that? Sarah?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm thinking about the time I made myself really ill by not seeing any daylight for a couple of months, because I was getting up early in the morning, still dark, getting home late, still dark. And then it affected me. Like, I was definitely really ill after that. Yeah, I suppose in terms of what I've asked for, so I mentioned this just before we came back for break. So possibly the most extravagant thing I've ever done was I asked for 5 weeks off, and it was paid. It was part of my annual leave entitlement, but I took it in a block, and I took it over summer. And originally the intention was I was going to help my parents. They were maybe moving back to this country, and in the end they decided they were perfectly fine staying where they were. So I was suddenly thinking, well, oh, maybe I don't need this, so you know, I won't take it off. And then my circumstances changed, and I needed to move. And actually I thought, no, the last time I moved, finished living in one place, moved, the next day I was in another place. The very first night, put the heating on, and the water pipe like and flooded the place. And then the next day I was supposed to start working, and I mean, like, you know, Adam, you said it, you were quite honest about it. I definitely had a mental breakdown, because I was just like, I was completely beside myself. I thought, because we had gas, I thought it was a gas explosion. It was basically a bubble had been blown in a plastic pipe, and it exploded. Like, lots of water, big mess. And I had to be signed off, because I was mentally not right after that. I was like, and so this time I asked for what I needed, and I knew I needed to come. I needed to set up my office, get it so that it was a good working space, so that I wasn't like sitting on my laptop around boxes, trying to, you know, and my work's been incredibly supportive, in the sense they've let me work a little bit more remotely temporarily, just to accommodate me, and, you know, some changes happening. And it's just, I really appreciate it. The time when I was off, everybody was really good about it. Nobody judged me. I was just thinking, yeah, everybody's gonna be like, yeah, okay, enjoy your holiday. And they were really good about it. You know, and I just I've never experienced that. I would have felt massive guilt. Somebody would have definitely said something, and it just felt supportive. Like, no, if that's what you need, you go and do that, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. And because I had to do a lot of things around moving, I didn't have a completely chill 5 weeks, but I definitely had enough time to get myself settled, so that I actually felt refreshed when I went back to work. Rather than, and I just thought, ever since I started working, I've ended one job on Friday and started the new one on Monday. And I did that for like 12 years. Like every couple of years, like, and I just think that was insane. And it was only really the burst water pipe that kind of probably did it for me. But
it's sometimes an outside that sometimes an outside factor that can just prompt you to make that change. And
yeah, you're not looking after yourself in the sense that you know, we have to move for various reasons. It's you've got to have, I think you've got to have stability in your personal life and your home life to actually be your best at work. And I think I'm really lucky. I do work for an employer where honestly through COVID they just said to people, look, whatever you need to do, you've got to educate your kids at home, you've got to, suddenly you've got children, like whilst you're trying to work, getting in on your on your Teams meeting, and it's just, they just said just put all of that first, like the work will still be there. And I've never really come across that before.
So again, hopefully we won't lose that as we move through this process.
At least another 100 years, hopefully.
But I think reflecting just about sort of perhaps various just reflecting on sort of some various sort of things you might go through or you know in your career, and just interviews and how much of a challenge interviews can be, you know, and whether you should ask for any additional help or support with interviews. I don't know. Megan, have you got any thoughts about that?
Yeah, something that I know a lot of people have found helpful is getting the questions in an interview in advance, or getting at least like the tasks that you're going to get sent to you beforehand. Because I know a lot of people do get, and I feel like this is beneficial to a wide range of people, because a lot of people would get overwhelmed when they get asked a question, even if it's like something so simple as like, what have you been doing for the past 2 years? You might just be like, I don't know. But if you know that they're going to ask you that, or you know, what is the typical interview questions, like, why do you want this job? If you know they're going to ask you that, you can sort of prepare yourself a bit better for that. I haven't really had that many interview-based adjustments. And something that I will say in terms of adjustments is I think that developer-led archaeology, especially in the field work, is quite far behind, I think, on the sort of accessibility, reasonable adjustments front. There's a lot of times where people will say, well, would I be able to go part-time? And they're like, no way could you go part-time. Other adjustments are just not, that's just seen, I think, as a bit of an inconvenience, and I think that's something that we really need to work on. I say we, but work on, like, as a sector, because I think a lot of archaeologists are neurodiverse. A lot of archaeologists do need or would benefit from these adjustments and additional support. And I think we're sort of carrying on as we've always carried on, because it's always worked this way and it's always been okay. But it's like, it could be so much better for everyone if we took on board things that are happening in other sectors and in even other corners of archaeology. Because I've noticed it mainly in the field work setting. And something else that I've noticed in the field work setting, which is maybe beneficial to a lot of neurodiverse people, is that there actually aren't that many interviews, especially at like a project archaeologist level. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, totally.
I know people who've been working in commercial archaeology for like 10 years and have never had an interview because they apply for a job and they get offered it based on their CV.
Wow, that's a really interesting observation. It's totally true, isn't it? You sort of get hired on the basis of your CV, which is
I suppose in terms of, I mean, that's, as you move into things like the consultancy side of things, they might sort of look, especially if you're going earlier into the consultancy, they may kind of go, what's this big missing gap? What's that? What's this? Because they wouldn't, because so many things are very much like, what are your qualifications on this, and instead of looking at experience as well. And I think that's something that we need to. I know that CIFA are working on a lot more of the other ways to get into archaeology. And I mean, I've done the CIFA's NVQ in archaeology just last year, which was kind of easier for me because I've got 10 years behind me. And the only reason I went for that is because I don't have the actual like degree or anything like that. But just nice to have another qualification that's a bit higher up. But like, I think that's something else that we need to really like think about as we are looking into people with neurodivergences. The fact that some of us may not have the same backing as other people on their CVs as well, because we may stick longer term at positions or not have the same level of I've lost the word.
Support and
things like grey literature. I mean, things like that are less likely to be. I have got loads of experience of doing GIS, and I do my own work, but I don't write the reports because I'm not a report writer. That's not what I do. That's not what's best for me to focus my time and energy on. So things like that kind of like might be things to think about and open up about.
Yeah, you've hit a sore spot for me, because I always feel like I'm not a very good archaeologist. Why is that? Because I don't have enough field experience, because I don't write grey literature, and I do fulfill a very kind of niche role within the Environment Agency, in the sense that I'm their internal advisor. I've worked in a quite a diverse number of organisations. I've worked for kind of local government, national, quangos, educational charity, and it's just the one thing I don't have is the field work, and the one thing that I have a real respect for are the field units. I'm never going to be one of those people who turns up with their little coat and they're like, oh, I'll have a go at that, because it's like, no, that's like that's a very specific skill set that I acknowledge that I don't have, but I have respect for people who do. And I do feel like, I'm not a consultant, but I'm in a weird kind of, I'm not a consultant, but I'm an internal advisor to the Environment Agency. And it's just, I do feel like I've got a certain amount of privilege because of the type of body that I work for. And when I've been talking about the flexibility that I've had probably less flexibility in other roles. But it's just, how can we make it better for the people who are actually on the ground doing the work? I've reported on things, where it's other people doing the work. And I've got friends who've had to leave field archaeology because they've become parents and there's no flexibility. So there really is, there's now numerous arguments for why we need a bit more flexibility within the commercial sector. I know friends who are consultants who've started to work like the 4-day weeks and things like that, and it's made a massive difference to them, because otherwise they'd have been completely burnt out. Because again, consultancy, I feel like I'm in a very privileged position, but it's just like, what can I do to actually highlight the fact that all these people who do all this work for us, they're the ones who are getting burnt out. How can we make sure that they have access to the same kind of support that we do?
I think it's interesting how some workplace adaptations that are kind of designed for neurodiverse colleagues actually will benefit the whole workforce. And I think that's come up time and time again over this chat, that these are not about segregating out neurodiverse colleagues and giving them workplace adaptations. These are factors that can help all of us sort of go through the workplace. I was just really thinking back to what Megan was saying there about sort of some areas of the sector perhaps don't have those interview processes in place. And I suppose there's quite a few factors there that can benefit, but also potentially impact neurodiverse archaeologists. So in terms of like, if you're judged just on your CV, what does that CV look like? How is it written? Has it got any typos in it? Has it got the grammar completely 100% and things like that? There's quite a lot potentially riding on that document there. And I was thinking, again, reflecting on my own experience, like early interviews I had, and I only started getting interviews when I moved into consultancy. And that was about 2 years, I suppose, as working in the field. But I was coached by a family member to do interviews. And every interview I've had since then, that individual has coached me through those discussions. And I would question whether I would have got through those processes if I hadn't had that access to privilege. And that's just, I think, as a person, but specifically as a neurodiverse, she's helped me develop techniques to go through that process. I think, Megan, what you said about being supplied with questions beforehand, that's a really useful process, because you can start to plan you can sound a lot more succinct if you can plan that paragraph in your head before you get in the room. Oh, really interesting. Oof, what a revelation, Megan. That's probably the observation of the session. So I think thinking about that as well with CP, with career progression, and career progression can be done through access to CPD opportunities. Adam, you were saying there about access, writing grey literature, but reading journals. How do those traditional types of CPD products, or how do they fit into someone like us? How do we develop our career if we find it challenging to read a big tome?
So I mean, I visit I visit as many museums as I can. I mean, I'm a member of the British Museum, so I go to all of their big exhibits. But you'll also find me carrying out those big hefty tomes from the exhibits, because I'm like, to clarify, I mean the books, not the...
I was just about to ask you that.
No, we know the British Museum has had a few problems lately. I'm not involved. Let me just say that. But yes, yeah. So I mean, going to things like museums, I think we forget about how many documentaries there are on TV about I mean, I'm not talking like Ancient Aliens or anything like that. I mean, like the actual proper archaeology one.
Digging for Britain is brilliant.
Yeah, things like, I mean, even just watching episodes of Time Tea, we forget how open CPD is. Mm-hmm. But also there are so many online courses now as well. That means that you can do it whenever. I mean, I know that things like the Oasis training for data entry and things like that, they do courses every couple of months online, but they do it at like 2 or 3 different times throughout the days, so that if you're busy during the day with work or schools or anything like that, you could do it in the evenings. So there's also that kind of flexibility. And I think that things like remembering that even our phones have book apps these days. Like, we can read the books as we're on the bus or on the train or whatever, to scroll through without having to carry big hefty things with us. Podcasts, for example, things like that. We sometimes forget how much there is all around us, and just sort of remembering that CPD is a lot more open than we actually... I know that when I was in one of my earlier roles, like CPD seemed to be this whole elusive, it has to be like a CIFA accredited course, or it has to be this. But actually almost anything can be CPD if you're doing it for the first time and you're learning something completely new. But I don't think it has to be learning something new either. I help out with so we do courses for LiDAR and GIS with one of our partners, and I help out on the courses, and I find it really useful, because not only has there usually been a slight tweak as we're going through, it also helps re-cement those basics. And I know that can't remember which one it was that said about going, I think it was Sarah said about sort of going back to those basic building blocks. I think we forget that sometimes that is equally important to reset the foundation of our knowledge. Because I don't know about you, but like sometimes you kind of go, I knew that, but I didn't remember that I knew that.
Yeah, I have a particular problem with that because I guess with archaeology there is an expectation that you are like a walking encyclopedia, so I definitely get a bit of that, and I have to explain that a lot of what I remember is in the cloud, in the sense that probably I think my brain's just a very good indexing system. I'll vaguely remember something and then I will Google the rest, and people are like horrified, you know, oh, you're going to Google. It's like, yes, but I know what I'm Googling. It's not like I'm just coming to it. And it was like, no, yeah, I did know that. But at the time when somebody just asked me, so it's what Megan was saying about preparation. I think it's really important to prepare, because I am not a walking encyclopedia. I don't even remember where my purse is from today. Like, I'm sure it's knocking about somewhere, but it's just, I think I felt really inadequate as an archaeologist because I can't trot out those facts in the same way that other people can. But I've got to feel comfortable with myself in the sense that, you know, it'd be nice to be like, maybe I just start again, just, you know. And it's like, well, no, I've got to a certain point. And I think in terms of the ongoing support and career development, it's for people like myself where there is a bit of like, I don't know, I'm so far removed from the very, like you're talking about building blocks and things like that. And it's just, how do I really cement what I know and develop it? Because I think for various reasons, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it kind of a shrinking of myself. I think it's some of the things like over talking or overstating or getting into things. And it's like I rein myself in quite a lot. So I feel like a lot of neurodivergent people rein themselves in. Yeah. And it's almost to the point that as you progress through your career, that kind of restricting yourself and reining yourself in is actually going to be professionally damaging eventually, because you might not say something, or you might not engage in something as much as you should do, because you think, oh, maybe I'm over talking, like Adam was saying. Like, I have a constant fear of over talking, and I don't think it's because anybody has necessarily told me that I have, but you start talking, and then you look at people, you think, I've overspoken. I'm now going to shrink back into myself and not speak for the rest of the day.
Well, please don't do that, because we've still got a good 15 minutes left. But I mean, I think it's worth highlighting there, isn't it? And that's, you know, when you talk about what it is to be an archaeologist, or to work in archaeology, like there's believed to be like 86 different job titles in archaeology, and not all of them are digging. And all of those different job titles are integral parts of the ecosystem that allows us to deliver archaeology and archaeological practice. But I think there's the misconception, like the almost caricature of archaeology and an archaeologist is that you are in a trench digging, you know, and things like that. And when the actual fact is, yes, maybe we've all had experience of doing that at one time or another for however length of time. We all do different jobs, just here is cool. So yeah.
I think I was just going to add, thinking about the kind of different CPD opportunities, and I find reading, I'm terrible at reading now. You know, if I go into a museum and I'll go round and have a look at things, I don't often read stuff, and the thought of going away with a big academic book and trying to read that, just not interested at all. I much prefer those kind of short bits. But I think sometimes it's about offering to take on things, because okay, it's in my job and I'm kind of privileged to have the access to that. But when we sort of had a reshuffle in staff, I ended up taking on the editing of the Archaeologists, and I probably wouldn't have read that anyway, but because that's what I have to do, and I have to focus on reading the articles that come in because I'm editing them or I'm sending a few comments back to people, it really makes me read it. So I think if we can take up, if somebody says, oh, somebody fancy just reading through my report, okay, I might not know the detail of what they're talking about, but I absorb the information. And then, you'll be in another meeting and somebody will say something and you go, oh no, actually, I do know what they're talking about now, because I read that bit of information and I've helped somebody. So I think looking at where amongst our colleagues, if we've got that opportunity, or, networks through the groups, maybe if you're a member of a group committee or something like that, if somebody offers something to actually go, yeah, okay, I'll volunteer and I'll take that opportunity in, and that will be CPD for me.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as you all know, I'm a massive fan of e-readers as well. So, and just the ability to read on something that's not white on black text. So, and the other, I did want to highlight, the other game changer for me at the moment is the read aloud function on from Microsoft. And I've actually only started using that about 2-3 months ago, and it's changed my emails because it's just picks up those 4 or 5 persistent typos that I cannot see, and it just picks it up when I can hear it. I don't see it when I'm reading it, but I hear it, and I can adjust it.
I use the punctuation. I can hear where the punctuation goes, whereas I don't know I mean, maybe my problem is my building blocks are not great from school, and it goes back to what we said about earlier. If you've kind of struggled a bit through school, particularly for me, it was post GCSEs, it all became a bit of a blur after that, to be honest. So I really do. I think I bought myself like a idiot's guide to English grammar, fully intending to read it, and I probably will do it at some point, but I probably should have read that when I was doing my PhD. But the read aloud function did improve. So as I was doing my PhD, I started using that. But this is where the accessibility comes into it. I try to use it for some of my documents at work, and it's hit or miss as to whether it will work properly, or whether it will just read out the footnote and then say error, blank page, error, blank page. And it's just, so I can't use that function for everything, because I really struggle to read now. I know it might sound quite surprising. I think I joke about it that I broke my brain doing my PhD, but I think I overextended myself.
Yeah.
And I do struggle to read. It's not that I can't read, but I struggle to maintain focus. So I don't read books anymore. I have to use audiobooks. So having that as a possibility to have the read aloud function really would help me. I digest things a lot better somehow when it's read out to me.
So I think just Megan, did you want to say something?
I think I'm good.
Yeah. Okay. So just thinking, sort of wanted to talk a little bit about sustainable platforms for support, and I think something that we're proud of the tea breaks and what they've, the sort of group of people they've brought together and the accessibility. But I think I don't know if struggle is the right word, but to sort of thinking beyond the tea breaks, how do we do that? Do we need to do that? It has been highlighted before, it'd be useful to have an online platform where people could share good practice or congregate, and actually we did set one up on Knowledge Hub, and it's not really been utilised so much. No shade being thrown here, I promise. So I guess I'm really, I think we're really interested in hearing your thoughts about that. Do we need to go beyond the tea breaks? Are the tea breaks enough for now? Or how do we support each other going forward on the limited budgets we've got for this kind of work? Any thoughts?
I think the tea breaks are really great. I think they're really helpful. Something that I've thought, and it does depend on sort of the scale of each organisation, but definitely some of the bigger units and bigger organisations I think could benefit from having their own internal like neurodiversity networks, because I think sometimes you want to talk to someone that's in a similar job role to you, or is like has the same line manager, something along those lines that's maybe like someone can literally be like, right, step one is to do this in this company. And I think that would be quite helpful. I mean, that is something that you could do by sort of extending the tea breaks into more of that online setting and like subgroups, but then that becomes like a really big thing, whereas I think it might be better to do just individual company networks if that's something that they can do.
Brilliant. Yeah, totally. I think all of us have mentioned throughout this session the value of having that peer-to-peer mentoring, or someone slightly senior mentoring as you're going through. Adam, have you got any thoughts on this? Or
I mean, At the moment, you seem to keep picking times for the meetings when I'm actually not around. So I haven't been around for the last few of them. But I have missed it because because they never stay on topic, which I love. We always kind of start here and kind of end up all the way over here. And I love that because it's like this chat here. It's kind of a bit free flowing and we go where it needs to go. And I mean, I enjoy them. I will put my hand up, as you saw earlier. I get the summary emails every Sunday from Knowledge Hub. I just have to remember to log in and check and participate. I think I'm terrible at like social media and things like that. I mean, I have LinkedIn. I don't really use it. I don't really have much in the way of so I don't always think to, oh, if I go on here to do this, I kind of forget. But I've been telling myself that I need to make more of an effort to go on to it. But I think that at the moment, I think the meeting, the tea breaks do a good job because I mean we've had some really interesting discussions. And we've had some amusing ones, we've had some really serious ones, we've had some which have been completely derailed by either going completely off topic or by somebody coming in with a very sort of, I need to moan about this to somebody and you are the best people for me to moan to, and we've had those kind of meetings. And to clarify, I do actually enjoy those discussions as well, because sometimes we do need that. So it's, I don't know. I think again, because we all have such different needs and such different, some people need that more one-on-one. Some people are probably functioning quite well. Maybe that's not the right terminology to be used, but are doing quite well with having the meetings, the tea breaks as they are. But I mean, we know that you guys are here. We know who's here in that sense.
Is the value that we collectively, we have created a community of not so much interest, but of, well, literally like-minded people. No, but like, it's about that community and having a community space that's the value. And I think, Alex, I don't know if you want to share your thoughts on this, but we were saying how valuable it is. We're still seeing new people come to these sessions. Alex, I don't know, we were chatting about that a bit on Monday, weren't we?
Yeah, I think that was at the last one. There were definitely new faces that came in there and new people asking or sharing different things, which is really good. I mean, I love the tea breaks. I think they're great. You get the same faces, you get new faces. It's always quite a small community, and I wonder if there's people out there who could do with the support of the tea breaks that don't know that they're happening. I get what you're saying, Adam, is that we've talked through today about digital fatigue and that kind of break from a computer. So what's the first thing we do? Create an online space that we're expecting people to then engage in somewhere else or go onto a platform. But the other thing that you said was about that I'd be interested to know is if you come together in the tea break and we're here, do people really know that somebody else is there? Can they actually go and contact the person that they might have met in that tea break forum? Is that kind of support network going out and kind of forming across the profession? I think that would be a really interesting thing to kind of find out from people if anyone contacts each other outside of the tea breaks. I'd love to think that would happen, and that's the kind of legacy of them. But yes, it sounds like so far, I mean, Sarah's yet to comment on the tea breaks, but that we quite like them.
Sarah, do you want to share your thoughts?
I do. I mean, yeah, I'm the same, Adam, in the sense that I, with all the best intentions, I do put them in my calendar and then something will pop up. So I've missed quite a few, but I think the the one or two that I managed to get in on really helped. Like there was a chap who had gone through an ADHD diagnosis right through to starting to take medication, and said it was like revolutionized the way his mind works, and I really appreciated that. It's just to understand, because you know, you don't we haven't really touched on this, but it's the fact that you don't necessarily need to have a formal diagnosis, but it represents people at different points in that journey, like people who've been long diagnosed, people who are just getting diagnosed, people who aren't diagnosed, but they're just trying to understand a bit more about themselves. So, but I will say I've got platform overload at the moment, and it's mostly because of work, because I'm sure if I started to look at all the different platforms we use, and don't get me started on like project management platforms and things where they've all got different passwords, they've all got, and I'm just constantly playing catch up to be like, I've written down all my passwords somewhere. If somebody ever steals where that is, I'm in trouble. But I think that's what I'm struggling with. I've restricted how many platforms I'm engaging with. And again, I get the summary as well. I think I don't know, it's maybe the format, which again it's something that is in development and you're trying to find your way. But there was a resource that I found quite early on, which is, I think, Alex, I shared with you, Attitude. I probably said that wrong. And it's like an online magazine, and it's got lots of little articles, and it gets into some pretty niche subjects. And I think what it also has is occasionally you have expert seminars. So I've been on some really niche, like ADHD seminars on like what was it, women and aging and hormones and ADHD, and I was like, that's me. And it's, yeah, I mean, that is very niche, very specific, and I know that you're trying to keep it as broad as possible. So I think the tea breaks are really useful, and honestly I am going to try. I think if anything for me, it's like again, mentioned this earlier, it's a mental health thing, just like like-minded people going through similar struggles or got some funny anecdotes to share, which is like, it's not always funny, is it? Yeah, I forgot the tent poles when we were going camping, just though. And I did have an absolute barney about that, but anyway, it was all good. But it's just certain things, like you can share it, you can, you know, and I do think, yeah, we're missing out people are on site, they're out, they're working remotely, they may not be able to access things like that. So I think, Alex, did you say about people contacting other people outside of the network? Like,
yeah, I was wondering if that was something that ever happened from the network.
Yeah, because I did see one post a long time ago that was posted on a Facebook group, won't say which one, and it got taken down, and I saw that this person was clearly really, really struggling, like the really, you know, the quite dark side of trying to understand what on earth is going on with your mind. And because it makes other people, you know, the way they may have been talking about it, and it was just I reached out to that person because I just felt like I've seen what can happen to people if you're not able to just talk to somebody. And again, I probably wasn't the best person to do that, but yeah, I think I have personal experience of having had a friend who various things going on. And yeah, so for me, like when I see a person like that, I really do want to reach out. So I suppose it's how do you encourage that? Because I think there would be some people where they would benefit from, again, it's that idea of like a buddy.
Yeah,
just somebody who like you can talk to. I will say that my buddy I pay for most of the time, it's therapy, but again, that's a privilege thing. I can only afford it now that I'm in a reasonably paid job. Definitely couldn't have afforded it early on in my career. And it's like, you know, if you, yeah, I do feel like that's a bit of a blind spot as well, in the sense that we can have all of these adjustments, but I really do feel like there's so many other psychological things that go along with it that having access to something like talking therapy, or, you know, I don't know, I don't have the answers.
no, I think there's a lot there, and I think again, I think I mean, with Alex, I facilitate the tea breaks, but actually I've got so much out of them, and it's just finding that community and learning how all our sort of unique heads and wonderful heads are similar but very different at the same time, and that's a real joy for me to find new people. It's been brilliant, so it's been really good. So we've got one final question, and then we're going to wrap up the session. And we wanted to repeat the question that we ended on last time, which was for the future with regards to what do we want for the future with regards to neurodiversity in archaeology. And it can be a one sentence, succinct answer. So I'm going to go to Megan.
I think I want to see archaeology celebrating neurodiversity for what it can bring in to the sector and to the discipline.
Brilliant, thank you. That's brilliant. Adam.
See, the last time I basically said that I agreed with the person who had gone before me, which I think was Penny in that case. So I do completely agree with Megan. I think that's a brilliant idea. But I also want to add, I think that I want to see, especially in archaeology, I want to see us be more open about it. And I know that that is a personal choice and a personal challenge as well. But I think that by being a lot more open, we can actually really start to make some changes that could be really positive. And I wish that I had somebody at the beginning of my career in archaeology. I wish we had this. I wish we had this like 10 years ago. That would have been amazing. I would have been so much more confident in my disability now than I am at the moment. And some people probably think I'm quite vocal about it anyway, but I would probably be a lot more assertive about it as well. But yeah, I think that I want to see a lot more openness and embracing of neurodiversity.
Brilliant, thank you. That's both amazing answers. Sarah.
Yes, agree with both of you, absolutely. I suppose it's just I guess the crossover with mental health. I think that's for me. So it's just, not doing things in a vacuum. So, let's definitely talk about workplace needs and adjustments and things like that. Carry on with the tea breaks, really good. And I guess, I don't know, some organizations do offer access to limited sessions of therapy, that kind of thing, but I suppose it's like ongoing, and it's just making sure that any support is accessible to everybody, and just making sure that we do need professionals. So it could almost be that we have sessions that are led by professionals, where maybe a focus is mental health and things like that, and just if people just knowing what's out there, really. Like I say, coming from a very, I am privileged, I'm lucky, but it's just I don't want that to limit people getting access to help and support, because I think we'll be better as a sector, because they'll have more confidence in themselves. And we're saying that we want to promote diversity within our sector. It will do that naturally, because instead of people shrinking back or trying to limit themselves, then those people will start to move forward. And we are seeing it in some of the management and the leadership positions for our sector. We're seeing new people coming through. So I think it's the support, making sure it's accessible to everybody.
Yeah, and I think also that goes hand in hand. I think there is a much better awareness of mental health in general in archaeology than it certainly ever was when I first started. So that's it goes hand in hand, I think, with that as well. It's good to see. But more work can always be done in that area. Alex, what's your answer to this question? what do we want for the future?
I agree with everything everyone said. But just kind of rounding up and pulling it all together, I think, you know, if we do this again this time next year and the tea breaks continue and the conference sessions continue, I think I'd like to see more neurodiverse archaeologists aware of what we're doing and coming in and joining the conversations and sharing what we're having, and equally more people who aren't necessarily neurodiverse coming in and engaging with that discussion and learning. So it's, you know, like you said, how can we progress forward? How can we make you know, learn from the different skills that neurodiverse people have? How can we have a look at those adaptations and, you know, believe that actually we can make a difference for all our employees, really. So I'd love to see that if we ask this question or have this discussion again next year, that we can see that that's changed.
That's seen that change. That's a challenge for us all. Yeah, all of the above. It's just, I think that ultimately I just want to see a greater awareness of neurodiversity, but the strengths and the challenges. But I think neurodiverse archaeologists have so much they are contributing so much to the sector, and we just need to make sure that everyone is supported to continue, I think, that contribution. So that's what I want to see, that everyone is adored and cherished for their uniqueness and their strengths. So yeah. Well, I think that all that remains is for me to say a huge thank you to all of you for contributing to this session, and I can't wait to follow it up with the discussion in the wider session, and to see how any responses for this talk, and whatever they might be. So thank you very much.